everyone. Welcome to the fourth offering of Township Talks and Happy Heritage Day! Last time we had our Umastandi CEO, Lusanda Nechitenze, who gave us invaluable information on how to be a township property entrepreneur and the importance of investment within the township areas, ladies and gentlemen. Today, we have the most sought after Neo, our legal and conveyancing officer. You guys have been asking for her since the first episode, and today she will tell us how to wind down estates, how to deal with deceased estates, and the importance of OTPs, etc. Everything that you need to know. Welcome, Neo.
Thank you for having me.
Neo, one of the first questions that generally I think most of my township entrepreneurs struggle with is people, deceased estates. You've had 14 years of experience within the legal fees field, and you've dealt with a number of areas, and one of them is deceased estate.
Yes.
If my parent passed away, and he was the last parent, there's three of us, who owns the property?
Well, to be honest, your dad still owns the property. So just because he unfortunately is no longer with us means his estate is still with us. So that means his estate must actually be legally wounded up in terms of the Administration of Estates Act. So until that is done, so your father might not be around, but your father or his executor in essence owns the property. So as much as he's deceased, the children need to wind up the estate in order to finalize it.
But what if I'm the one who stays in the property with my wife? Do I then get the legal rights after winding up to own the property?
Not necessarily. And this is a very important question. It's great that you raised it. If someone passes away, who ends up with their assets is their heirs in terms of the act. So if they have a will, they get to choose who ends up with their assets. But if they don't, the Interstate Succession Act picks who inherits. So it's not necessarily the one who's in control or current possession of the property. It has to go in accordance with the law, unfortunately.
You've been speaking a lot about winding up, Neo. What is winding up? What's the process of winding up? How do I even begin?
Okay. So there are a number of things that you need to look at. You need to look at who's assisting you, how much the estate, how much you actually want to wind up is worth. It needs to be reported to the Master of the High Court, because winding up the estate happens underneath the supervision of the Master. You have an executor who's appointed to act on behalf of the estate, but they report to the Master. So in a nutshell, you need to find someone assisting you if the estate is more than 250,000 Rand. If it's below, you can gather up all the heirs to the estate and head to the Master, and they will assist you there.
And does Umastandi help me with all of this?
Unfortunately not. We can guide you. We definitely will have an input on how you can go about it, where you can go to, but unfortunately we are not administrators of estates. We help you finance the property once it's in the correct entity, but no, the estate is a separate process from the financing process. But unfortunately in the township sector we see that quite a bit. We have a lot of family homes, and that needs to be dealt with before we can start the project.
Now, you mentioned one of the problems, that deceased estate is definitely one of the problems that we deal with in the township area. Title deeds and access to title deeds is also another problem that we deal with.
Yes.
Can Umastandi finance me if I don't own the title deed, or if I have a 99-year lease within a property?
Okay. So with financing is that we provide you the facility, or rather the money to build. But as security, we take up a mortgage. We register rather a mortgage in favor of that property. So in order to register a mortgage, you unfortunately need a title deed. So if you have consent to use, that won't work. Unfortunately, in a lot of rural areas, people have the right to utilize the land and not necessarily ownership of that land. And in order to have what you need to prove ownership in this country is unfortunately a deed of transfer. And that's what we require, unfortunately.
Speaking of title deeds, I've heard of some restrictions that title deed may have, and some of them I've heard the word servitude caveat. What do these words mean, and what does it mean for my investment property?
Okay, that's a great question, by the way. So in every township, and township is not necessarily just the township, any area.
Of course, they look she.
Yes, that's the word I was looking for. Thank you. So in any township, in the legal sense of townships, there are restrictions and conditions for that township. So in every area, the restrictions and rules are going to be different. There's bylaws as well for that act. So the bylaws may have restrictions on that particular area. They may be reflected in the title deed as well. So what servitudes are is that you have someone else has the right over your property. A lot of the times what we see often is that the municipality will have a servitude over your property. So they'll have pipes running underneath, they will have an electricity station on your property, and they have a right to access that portion of your land through what is called a servitude. So that is actually restrictive on you as the owner, so you're allowed to do certain things without touching the servitudes and implementing the servitudes on that property. Everything must be done within the bylaws and the zoning laws. All of that must be taken into account before you decide what you want to do with your property.
No, thank you, Neo. Guys, if you have any more questions, Neo has told us about deceased estate, winding down, title deeds, servitudes, caveats, all the important legal words that usually scare us. If you have any questions, please drop them down, and Neo and I are going to have more interviews where we engage and speak about some of the most potent and important questions that you guys may have. Thank you.